Today, we are joined by senior NBA insider Michael Scotto to discuss the Rockets, getting pick 3 in the draft. Mike got a chance to hit the NBA Combine, so we're going to be talking about that as well, and things the Rockets could be doing this offseason. So stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this episode of the Bradeaux and Will Show. All right, and welcome back to the episode of the Bradeaux and Will Show. Y'all heard Brad in the intro. We got a very special guest with us on the show today. We got our guy, Michael Scotto. Michael, let people know where they can find you at, what you do. Just kind of give me a little rundown of who you are.
Sure thing. What's up, fellas? Michael Scotto, senior NBA insider for HoopsHype.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike A. Scotto, Mike A. Scotto. Also the host of the Hoops Hype podcast. You can check that out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Right now, we're doing a lot of team off-season previews there. Me and a fellow beat writer, usually from that team. I'll have one with Haywood Highsmith coming up soon. He's going to be an interesting free agent for the Miami Heat if they can keep him. They got to look at Caleb Martin as well. So a lot to figure out there. And certainly I'm here with you guys. We'll talk some Houston Rockets. They're going to have a busy offseason. They certainly were active at the trade deadline last year. And that's pretty much where you can find me and my stuff.
Yeah, and guys, if you aren't tapped in with Michael's stuff, you definitely need to. A really good follow on Twitter. Amazing podcast as well, so definitely tap in with him. And as he said, busy offseason last year, and this one's going to be a lot more busy since they jumped from projected pick 9 all the way up to pick 3. So, I wanted to start with that today. Your thoughts on the Rockets having the 3rd pick in the draft and maybe what you've been hearing or what you think they could potentially do with that 3rd pick.
Sure. I mean, look, I think in this draft, there's no consensus number 1 pick or anything like that. Ultimately, it's to me a great trade chip if they want to use it and package it to try to get a starting caliber upgrade, which they've been trying to do since last year. Before the trade deadline, they were trying to go get Brooklyn Nets swingman Mikal Bridges, and this pick would have been in that conversation. And so, talks really didn't get too far. But it does show you kind of where Houston is in terms of the evolution of their roster. They are looking to get better, more win now type of guys to supplement the young core that they have. And so I think for the Rockets, that's going to be the preview a little bit of going into the draft and free agency for Rafael Stone. He's going to be active, looking to improve this team and help them take the next step. Ime Udoka was at the NBA Draft Combine, and he talked about 2 things. Number 1, how the development of the young core that they have is going to be imperative for them to try to take that next step. And number 2, that they are trying to be a playoff team next year. And in the Western Conference, which is historically better than it's ever been, especially this season, when you look at how many teams were over 500. And in a normal year, the Rockets certainly would have competed for a play-in spot. And, you look at where they ended up, and not being a playoff team. And they had a good end of the regular season. So they're trending in the right direction, but they do need a little bit more help, a little bit more win now type of veteran talent if they're going to continue to take that next step and move forward. And that's what Rafael Stone's going to be looking for. Not particularly like one set position at the moment, but if there is a starting caliber upgrade that he can get that they deem worthwhile, they'll do it. They have a boatload of first-round picks that they can move going forward, and it puts them in a position of leverage. Certainly with those Brooklyn picks that they have coming up from the James Harden trade. So I certainly expect Rafael to be active.
If you were a betting man as of today is May 17, 2024. You're a betting man. Do you think the Rockets make a selection at number 3, or do you think this pick is going by draft night?
First of all, I'm no Jonte Porter. I would say I'm not a betting man, but
yeah,
I would say that I think for the Rockets, while it is a high pick, this draft it is harder. It's going to be harder to trade one of those top picks because there's essentially equal value in the eyes of some executives from 1 to 10, and so I would say if there is a player on the board that a team really covets, then that's a different conversation. But truthfully, I think it's a sweetener in a package for the Rockets so they can do it. So if you're asking me by the time the clock starts, if they keep the pick, I think they're going to end up having to. Just as of now. And if so, then it's going to be interesting because you look at most likely Alex Sarr is going to be off the board. I think Zachary Reese-Shea also could be off the board, which is interesting because, as I mentioned, they tried to get Mikal Bridges, who's a 3-and-D kind of guy, and that's exactly what Reese-Shea is at 6'9", and he's got great size. So that would have been interesting. For you guys at that spot, there's obviously been a lot of chatter about like Donovan Clingan there. I'm not sure how he would fit with Alperen and Şengün, but our friend Kelly Eco was alongside there plugging away, asking Donovan about that. And Donovan was saying that Donovan can stretch the floor. He thinks he can shoot NBA 3-pointers. Didn't really have to do it at UConn, but he thinks that's a part of his game that he's going to show executives in workouts and whatnot. So something to keep an eye on there. Obviously, a great shot blocker. There's a lot of different ways they can go after those first two picks. Obviously, the scoring guards out there like Rob Dillingham, microwave guy off the bench, kind of reminds me of Lou Williams, Jacoby Walter. If you trade down, maybe a guy that can shoot, spread the floor. There's a lot of different ways that they can go once they get past the first two picks. And so for Houston, I do think they're certainly going to try to shop this pick, but ultimately, given where the draft is and the value of these picks right now, I think they may have to make this selection at 3.
Yeah, I know Brad's going to ask you a question. I was going to ask one more question, kind of follow up on what you just said. I know you said that you think that in this class, a lot of executives believe that the first pick isn't that much different than like the 10th pick, and I kind of see where that's coming from. Mm-hmm. So in that scenario, you would probably go more with like the prospect you think makes the most sense for your team. So is there a prospect that you specifically like for the Houston Rockets? I think you mentioned Reese-Shea, but is there anybody else who you think would be available that you really like for the Rockets?
Interesting. To me, yeah, I think Reese-Shea was the guy that was going to be ideally like the number one guy for them, just given their needs. But let me take a look at my board here and give you a fairer answer. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, you're good.
Let me just pull it up. Hold on.
And while you do that, yeah, a big popular consensus on Rocket side of things on social media.
Where are they going?
They've fallen in love with Reed Sheppard. Houston Rockets team lacks a lot of 3-point shooting. Feel he can be a good plug-in and that backup shooting guard role.
He'd be an interesting role player in a backup point guard, more to Fred VanVleet down the line. Right. Modest Bazelis, they kind of have like a guy somewhat like him in Jabari Smith, given his size. So I don't know if positionally that would be a fit. I actually think that they're not wrong. Reed Sheppard's 3-point shooting and efficiency. He's good. He's got good active hands. He's got a higher. I think his vertical really wowed people at the combine. So it'd be interesting to see him running a fast break with Jalen Green. I could see that from that perspective. I don't necessarily think you need a guy like Rob Dillingham in the sense that Rob is a really good scorer and a microwave guy. It reminds me of Lou Williams. But if you're looking more for and he is efficient shooting the ball, but I think you already have like a scoring kind of guy in Jalen Green. Nikola Topic has good size at 6'6" and is more of a traditional point guard that can pass the ball, but he lacks shooting efficiency. We touched on Clingan, Reed. I guess if I had to pick, I would go probably either Reed, Topic. I don't think Ron Holland would be there. I don't think they would go that high yet, given their roster. So I would say I think Reed. Actually, I think the fans are onto something there. But it's again so wide open that like I don't think. To your point, Will, I think it's more like about going for a positional need. And I know Aaron Holiday gave them good minutes last year, but if you're looking long-term, especially if you're going to look for a kind of a point guard in the future, because Fred is a great veteran guy now, but more for the future, Reed could make sense. But I say all this, and knowing Rafael, like the way he took Josh Christopher, it's like, you know what, he might turn around and take Rob Dillingham. So I'll go with if they take obviously a big, I'll go with Clingan. If they go with a guard, I would say in this order, I'll go with Reed, Rob, Toppich.
Got you. Yeah. And I'll say this. One of our questions here was we were going to ask about Donovan Clingan, his fit. And you touched on that really well. I agree with you in the sense where Will and I are on the same page. We don't necessarily see the fit with Alperen and Şengün, especially two guys probably can't guard the perimeter. Also not shooting threats right now. It's able to work for a team like Minnesota because they have a generational big man shooter and a generational defender. So, yeah, we didn't personally see that fit. But outside of that, sleepers in the draft. That's another thing we want to touch on. You just went to the combine, so did you see anyone that stood out in your opinion?
Well, the guy I was going to tell you, I think is a sleeper, it wasn't at the combine. He was playing overseas. To Jane Saloon. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But I like that French kid because he's got really good size, about 6'9". He showed he was inconsistent this year, but when he was hitting the three ball, he looked really good. And I think if you can get that to be more consistent, he's the type of guy, I don't know if I would call like a home run swing, but certainly an upside swing, I would say, for teams. To me, that I think. I also am a fan of Tyler Smith from G League Ignite further down in the draft. I think Tyler Smith is a guy that could be, as long as he's right between the years mentally and he focuses on what he needs to do, that kid has a niche in the NBA where he can be a stretch big. He's got good size, can put it on the floor. Some people compared him, from executives and scouts I've spoken to kind of like a Nas Reed. And I think that would be a heck of a hit for him if he becomes that, and he would make a lot of money. So that's a guy that those two guys are just personal guys I'm kind of looking at as some sleepers further down the draft and most likely probably out of the top 10.
Got you. Yeah. And I'll say this real quick and I'll pass it to Will. Yeah, we breezed through these questions. Personally, that was my last one. I know Will has one waiting for you as well.
Yeah. I have actually I had two more questions I was going to ask you.
Sure.
So the first of the, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit off camera. You were talking about the Rockets in free agency, how you think they probably won't be two major players in free agency this year, probably more trade. So just, I guess, what do you think they're going to do the summer entirely? So, we obviously know they're going to do with the draft, but what do you think their approach is going to be with the free agency, with the trades? What are we going to see from the Rockets this summer?
Well, knowing Rafael, I would say it's ideally big game hunting. You got to see what happens with a few players. There's already a lot of marquee guys that could become available. We have to wait and see what happens with the Donovan Mitchell contract situation. Ultimately, he's either going to get an extension or the full max, or he's not going to take it. And if he doesn't take it, then if you're Cleveland, you got a real decision to make, and you may have to move him without losing him for nothing. So, Donovan, Darius Garland one of those two would be out there, depending on what happens. I don't think obviously Jared Allen's a fit for them. Then I look at Brandon Ingram with the Pelicans because they're trying to build around Zion. They want to add shooting. And while Brandon can shoot, but my point is they're trying to more steer towards Trey Murphy, more minutes for Herb Jones. Brandon Ingram's got a year left on his deal. He's going to want a lot of money. Is it fiscally ideal for New Orleans to go that route? Probably not if you're building around Zion and use Brandon as a trade chip to get maybe another guard or a big as well coming back, or future assets, which obviously Houston, that's the one thing I would say to you guys. I think those picks that Houston has down the line, that is the top currency that they have. Look, certainly before the trade deadline, the concept of moving Jalen Green was a bit of a hot topic, but he played a lot better towards the end of the season. I think looking at his contract situation coming up and whether they're going to extend him or not and how much money could play a role down the line, whether he's moved or not. But that time will tell on that. That's very TBD. Şengün seems like a core piece they're keeping. Jabari Smith is a versatile guy at the forward spot, interchangeable. that they like. Still has room to grow, still a young player. And so, in fact, I honestly think Jabari is probably younger than some of the guys that are in this draft class.
Just
you know,
turned
just
21.
just for reference for fans, because sometimes I think people get like lost in the fact that, oh, this guy's going to be his third year, but it's like the age matters. And ironically, Josh Christopher is a guy who's, I believe, 22, and he was a big guy in Rockets Twitter world, I remember, certainly. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm looking at for the Rockets. Again, this is a team that has a nice foundation right now with their young core. But when you're trying to take the next step, especially in the vaunted Western Conference, you've got to go big game hunting if they can. Rafael has always been active and done his job, making calls, taking calls, and I expect similar going forward into the summer here in the offseason.
I'll sneak in one quick question before Will's last
Sure.
one. On this same topic, of the Rockets, this personal opinion for you. What would you do here? It's a big topic within Rockets Twitter as well. Would you keep that young core of 6 together for this upcoming season, see what they could do? Or would you, as Rafael could potentially, go big game hunting, maybe look for a guy like Donovan Mitchell or
who are you identifying as the core? And then I'll answer.
So, yeah, the young core 6, Tari Eason and under. So we got Tari Eason, Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, Cam Whitmore, Amen Thompson, and Jabari Smith.
And this is if I'm the GM?
If you're in charge, if you're calling the shots.
If I'm the GM, certainly I'm dangling the Brooklyn picks going forward. Me personally, I would try to move this number 3 pick, certainly if I could.
Mm-hmm.
If not, I think Eason's a nice player, but I think you can certainly move him. Amen Thompson, I think, has upside, but I didn't know if his shooting or lack of would limit his ceiling as a prospect. Really good defensive player. But he would be a guy I would be willing to part with. And, Jalen Green, I think it comes down to the money. Because if Jalen Green's going to want a max contract, I don't know if he's that guy. I know he had a nice stretch at the end of the season, and he played really well. But for the most part of the regular season, it seemed like statistically a lot of his numbers were the same. With Ime, he's trying to break him out of certain habits that he developed when the team was struggling more so and make him more of a winning player. And again, towards the end of the year, you saw strides that way. But to me, if you can land a superstar guy, I know you mentioned specifically Donovan, I think you have to look at it. And but that's, of course, taking into account that you can get him on an extension, and believe me, behind the scenes, there would be a conversation somewhere along the way to make sure that happens. You don't gut the farm to do that without knowing that's in your back pocket. Like the way like the Knicks did with OG Anunoby, and a lot of people felt like, okay, their CAA ties, Leon Rose, former president, GM of the Knicks. You like to think there's some understanding there. So yeah, I would certainly be open to moving a lot of those guys. I think for Şengün, they want to keep him ideally. And Jabari, they still feel really good about, because he's versatile defensively, he could shoot. And so I think more you're looking at the other guys that we touched on, and the picks, if you're going to go swinging for Donovan Mitchell or make any type of win now, swing for the fences, home run trade of an all-star caliber guy.
I appreciate that insight.
Sure.
The last question I had, I was just going to ask. You kind of jumped it a little bit with the extensions for Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün. They're both extension eligible this summer.
Yeah.
So have you heard anything about them potentially getting extensions this summer? Is that going to be in the works, or do you think the Rockets are going to kind of roll those conversations into next season when they're restricted free agents?
Right.
Well, I think it's interesting now. Şengün had his injury at the end of the year, but like knock on wood, you think like he'll be okay coming back from that. Jalen Green certainly helped his value. So again, I don't know on Jalen. I think Jalen, we really have to wait and see how that evolves. I would feel more confident about Şengün of the two. But I don't know yet where because if you're Jalen's camp, you're going to try to want as close to the max as you can get, as are a lot of these guys that are going to do extensions. And I don't know if Rafael is there yet. So I'm more of the mindset that Şengün really broke out and, was consistent for most of the year before he got hurt. I think you look at that and you say, all right, that's a guy I want to lock up for sure. And they kind of go from there. I think you guys, at least I've seen on Rockets, sort of they call him Baby Jokic a little bit. That's a little lofty, but a poor man's at that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. For me personally, a lot of guys on Rockets Twitter want to see Şengün extended, maybe even Jalen. I think it's smart to just give it one more season.
There's no rush. You don't need to. It's only if you're going to get the deal you want, in my opinion.
I agree. And you'll know exactly what value you'll get, especially with another year with Ime Udoka, another full off season, another full sample size. Smart decision.
Yeah. And if you're the player and you don't get what you want, go bet on yourself and get paid.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Will, do you have any other questions?
That'd answer my question.
All right. Well, Mike, one more time, man. Go ahead and tell the viewers, where they can find your stuff.
Sure. Definitely check out Twitter, X, at Mike A. Scotto. Mike A is an apple, SCOTTO. Make sure you're checking out the HoopsHype podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you're listening to podcasts. Like I told you, we're doing a lot of off-season previews with teams now, doing a lot of reporting on there. And Haywood Highsmith will come on. I'm working on a few other players as well. So, definitely tune into that. Check it out on Spotify. Give it your rating, all that good stuff.
Yeah. We appreciate you for coming on the show, taking time to talk to us today. We're going to get you on again, probably sometime, either not this offseason, next offseason, to continue talking about the Rockets. So, like I said, I appreciate you for taking time out your day. If you made it into the podcast, we appreciate you for still listening and still rocking with us. And we'll see you guys next time where we hopefully have some more, news and stuff to talk about with this upcoming draft and free agency. So, appreciate you for listening.